Let's start with guitar for something different. I think last time I spent like an hour at the beginning on drums, and if you don't like drums, that's probably really boring. So let's start with the guitars. So we've got Marshall on the right side with my Jericho guitar with a humbucker in it, and then a Stratocaster on the left side with just the normal Strat pickups in it going through an amp sim. And those together sound like this. So as you can hear, both guitars are playing different parts. One's playing more of a higher lead thing and the other one's just playing pretty much straight power chords. But there's a few little cool moments where they both do different lead parts and stuff like that. Especially in the bridge. As I said, that Strat is just from the demo, and it was the first time I was playing along to it, and the vocals were there. I was just jamming along and having a great time, and I just, was reacting to the vocals and did a couple of little leady parts, and I ended up leaving them in. Yeah, so that Strat guitar is playing what I call holiday chords. So I first learnt these chords when I was younger, listening to Green Day, the song Holiday, where it's like you play the first and the third, but the third's really high up, like on the B string, and you're playing the first on the A string, and you're playing it like that. So that is what the Strat is doing pretty much the entire song, through the bridge particularly. Where the Marshall amp is playing an octave lower, playing just power chords. I kind of tried to go for like a classic Marshall-y slash guitar tone, where you're just playing hard, digged in picking on a Marshall amp with a humbucker, and I'm happy with those guitar tones. And I don't think there's a bunch of processing. I haven't really looked at this session, so I could be wrong. But let's pull up the Strat and see what's going on here. The amp is this S-Gear amp that used to come in the Slate Digital bundle thing that I've got, but it's not in there for some reason anymore. So when I opened this session, the guitar tone was gone, so I just had to get a free trial of this amp. But it's this Wayfarer amp, which sounds really cool. It kind of sounds like a combo, like a Mesa combo type amp. And I'm using a ribbon mic on it, which makes it really, really dark. So that's why the treble is all the way up, because yeah, that ribbon mic is really, really dark. Cool, so let's look at the processing. Alright, so this EQ is just boosting a little bit of low end, like a bell at 100 Hertz, just to give it a bit more chunk. And then see, yeah, here, so 15K. So 15K is turned all the way up. I can't see, 10 dB. Because yeah, the guitar tone is just so dark. So if I turn this off, you'll be able to hear how dark that guitar tone is. Yeah, so it needed that. But instead of going for a different mic that has more brightness and not having to do this, I found I like the mid-range character of this microphone. I found the top end, even when I boosted it this much, to sound really smooth. So that's why I opted out for this mic rather than a different mic. Is you have to do more to it, but in the end it just sounded better. And then this virtual drive. which isn't really doing anything. You'd just be adding some harmonics, turning it down a little bit there. And then let's have a look. Okay, so boosting a lot more low end there. It mustn't have had much low end. Yep, so it needed that. And then, yeah, I remember all the high end that this mic picked up of that amp was just this range here that was really harsh. So I had to pull that out quite a bit. So if I take that out, you'll hear sort of how harsh it is there because of how much treble I'm boosting. So it sounds a lot nicer with that done there. And then this Q10, I'm just pulling out a resonance there. That won't really sound like much. It must have just been annoying me. And this is something that I was doing a lot at that time, is just using a lot of tape and clipping stuff to make it sound brighter and more immediate. And this J37 tape is really good for that. We'll try and hear it on and off. So that actually makes quite a big difference. That sounds a lot better with that on, a lot brighter. And then, yeah, so I've got this, just compressing it a little bit to give it that chunk and attack. Just a little bit. I really like that on rock guitar tones. I think with the Marshall amp, I have a Hairball Audio 1176, and I think I did this setting on the way in on the recording. So it probably won't have this plugin on the Marshall amp, but it's just doing this much. So you mainly hear it when I do like a stop, and then it has time for the needle to retract, and then you hit another thing, and then it kind of like pops back up, and you just hear that punch of air on the start of a new chord, just to give it a bit more aggressiveness. Notching out that treble area, there must have been a bad resonance in there. And my Strat is set up still really poorly. I haven't changed the strings on it for ages, and I know there's just a lot of buzziness and bad sounds going on, which I have to count for by doing this kind of thing a lot. Sometimes I do this on the DI before it hits the amp as well, because once the amp picks it up, you're kind of screwed. So that needed to happen. That's very annoying sounding. And then just some more. Now this looks more like my type of EQ. So this is boosting some more low end here. Just that rumbly, cabby low end. And then it must have been... Actually, let's just turn this EQ off. Sounds really good with that back on. So it's notching out some annoying sounding areas there of the guitar amp, and then generally just once that area is flattened back out, there's no spikes, peaks and valleys, I'm boosting that area back up uniformly there. And then just doing, this is basically like a high shelf. That ribbon mic just has such a steep roll off that I've had to add that back in. And I really like that really airy sound on a guitar amp, like up in that, I know a lot of people roll it off. I like that 10K and stuff. It just makes a guitar amp sound really nice to me. So I'll always do that kind of stuff if it's not in there. So you can hear as I turned those high ones off, it actually sounded harsher. Somehow just having that extra extended top end makes that harsh mid top end sound less bad and less noticeable. So it just sounds more expensive and more finished with that on there. So I think that's the extent of the Strat. So let's have a listen to... Let's go to a different part of the song and have a listen to the Marshall amp. Sounds like this. So that is just a Marshall JCM 800 turned up really, really, really loud with the Mesa, whatever it was, the tread plate, grid slammer pedal, and an SM57 on it. That's it, just an SM57. So that type of amp with that kind of setup always needs a lot of EQ. A Marshall and a 57 just will have a lot of nasty stuff going on. So if I turn all this processing off, you should be able to hear it. So that's how it sounds coming in, and it's not very attractive. I have the SM57 right in front of the speaker cone, and I know a lot of people would move it off to the side of the cone to get less of that harshness. But again, what's happening when you do that is the mid-range isn't as clear or as good when you go off to the side. Yeah, the top end's not as nasty, but the awesome part of the tone isn't as good. So I'd rather have the mid-range sound really good and then have this nasty top end that I can fix afterwards. Even though it's no more work processing afterwards, I find that I end up with a much better result if I do it this way. So just straight in the center of the cone. Alright, so let's look at what I did here. So again, because it's a 57, you need to boost a bit of bottom end back in. Yep, so that was necessary there. And then here is just me trying to tidy up this this area here that's a bit ratty and all over the place. If I turn this off, you'll be able to see all these peaks and valleys there. So you can see there's a gap here, and then there's some really like pointy frequencies around here, and it doesn't sound very nice or balanced. You turn those back on. And it's much nicer. This stuff isn't really adding anything to the note or the tone, but it's necessary to have it there just to have it balanced with the other instruments in the song. Okay, so that's the first EQ. Let's have a look at this second EQ. So the second EQ is, I think what happened here is I was listening to the amp while I was playing it at a much lower volume, and I had the treble sounding right to my ears, but once I turned the amp up really loud to record, the treble actually kind of backs off a bit and it sounds a bit softer, so I kind of missed the mark on the treble, just because how much changes when you turn it up loud. So this is me just trying to find the treble area of the amp and boost it up a little bit more. And I find that treble area on a Marshall amp is around 1.5. It's there that you can still hear the note, but it's got that nice bitey thing. And this is just a resonance that I'm pulling out. That's not very interesting to look at. Okay. And then I've got this API EQ on it, boosting some 300. Yeah, I guess I just kind of wanted the guitar to be a bit less scooped and a bit fuller in that you know, that low mid area that a lot of rock or metal guitar tones, they'll scoop that out, but I just liked that in there. You might be able to hear it if I turn it on and off. Yeah, I feel like I can hear that. It just gets a bit wider and fuller sounding down there. And then, so I'll turn this off and on so you can hear it. So that just makes it sound a bit nicer, a bit more finished, a bit more hi-fi. So that's both the guitars. Now both the guitars are bussed to this guitar bus here, where I have just a little more processing on both the guitars as a whole. I must have been mixing it, and I always balance the left and the right guitar to each other so they have the same amount of top end and bottom end, especially because I'm always using different guitars on either side and different amps, so it's important that they're both the same amount of brightness and low end. So once I noticed the guitar was too whatever I thought it was, maybe too dark, instead of going and doing it on each guitar, I might as well do it on the guitar bus at this point. So yeah, a bit more treble, that 1.5K, which is the treble area on these amps, and then a bit more 10K. So I'll turn this off and on so you can hear it. That's a huge part of the sound. I was really loving these API EQs at the time. And I actually, at this time, I had bought a 550B API EQ. But because I was recording the guitar amp right next to me and so loud that I couldn't hear it, I didn't really want to mess with EQing it on the way in. I wanted to do it on the plug-in. And it sounds just as good in my opinion, the plug-in to the hardware. It was fine. I freaked out at the time, but it worked out well. And then just a little more low-end boost. And a bit more of that wide guitar sound. And I did roll off the top just a little bit there at 15K, but you're still getting all this nice, 10, 12K there. Yeah, cool. So that's it for the guitars there, except for this guitar solo here. So that guitar solo is from the demo as well, which is why it's an amp sim with my Strat guitar. I did try recreating this with my Marshall. So this is an unprocessed version of it recorded with my Marshall, which I didn't end up using because the one from the demo was just better. So yeah, it's not a very good take, but I could immediately tell that it just didn't sound as cool as this one here. And part of it has to do with, this was an improv thing, and just reacting to the song, and you can tell I'm really digging in, and it's got a lot of sort of emotional character to it, and it just sounded better. So this is that same S-Gear plugin. With the ribbon mic again, and I'm going to say it's probably the same. Yeah, it's just copied across the same processing, but it's got a bit of delay on it, so it's got like a slapback and a quarter note thing there. Yeah, besides that, it's the same processing. So that's it for guitars.